fact that you can pick up the phone and call any IABC member that you find in the directory, tell them you're a fellow IABC member, and whatever they're doing, they'll stop and they'll help you. I've experienced this over and over again, and I haven't encountered it in other organizations where I have been membered. These other organizations are wonderful. I still belong to some of them. I get a lot of value out of them, but this is one feature of IABC that I just haven't experienced anywhere else. So if that appeals to you, give it a look. When Diana invited me, I was going to be here anyway. My wife and I have been traveling since October 6th, starting with a week in New York, then a week in Poland, then a week in Denmark, all associated with work and the opportunity to vacation. Michelle has been to Bach, I have not. So I saw this as a wonderful opportunity to see the town, which is lovely. But Diana asked if I could broadly cover some of the themes that are particularly important. And I found it interesting, Diana, that you talked about interns. Who was talking? Oh, that's right. You were talking about interns being the one that helped you. I find that the folks who are digital natives understand how to use these things as communicators, as consumers, but not necessarily as communicators, not strategically in order to achieve a business goal. And I think that this is one of the things that we have to recognize is that having established a great Facebook presence and amassed a lot of friends, or pulled together 5,000 followers on Twitter doesn't qualify you to be the manager of communications responsible for social media. We have to figure out how to use these tools to achieve measurable goals for our organization. And that means staying on top of the trends. There are a lot of different ways to do this, but what I want to talk about is a few of the trends that I think are vitally important that seem to me to have some staying power. A lot of them revolve around a word that has really risen lately in prominence that we're using a lot. That word is experience. There is data that shows that millennials, for example, would rather spend their money on an experience than on a product. They're less interested in material acquisition than in accumulating experiences. And we've seen the rise of this term experience marketing. A friend of mine, David Murray, who takes great pride in being perhaps the youngest curmudgeon on the planet, recently dismissed experience marketing as just so much nonsense. But the fact is that with social media, everybody is sharing their own experience. The idea of a salesman in a business-to-business organization getting a qualified lead and converting that lead into a customer is getting more and more difficult because the way a business-to-business customer works these days is that they go into a professional forum, some sort of a network. It could be LinkedIn. It could be a vertical network. We're seeing the rise of vertical professional networks, Doximity for doctors and GitHub for programmers and engineers, and there are dozens of these that are getting millions of dollars of investment capital. And they share their problems, they share their situations, they ask, how do you deal with this? They accumulate that information, then they go research. They find out what experiences people have written about. By the time they pick up the phone and call a salesperson, they've pretty much already made up their mind about who they're going to do business with and why. So for salespeople, it's important now to be involved at the beginning of the process, not waiting for the lead to come from marketing. That means that marketers and salespeople need to start working much more closely together than they have, rather than the sequential process of marketing generating leads and passing them off to salespeople. Salespeople, we were talking about this at lunch, complaining about the quality of the leads, and the marketers complaining that sales isn't converting the leads we worked so hard to get. There must be much closer collaboration between marketing and sales needs to be trained how to do this. So the experience, whether it's B2B or B2C, is very important, and we need to pay a lot of attention to this. So this requires us to rethink the way we approach social media. I find that a lot of people I talk to have spent a lot of time chasing shiny objects, something that is new and cool and exciting. I am a huge believer, by the way, in experimentation. I don't think there's anything wrong when a new social channel comes out to jump in and see what happens if you dip your toe in those waters. But we need to know who we're trying to attract and why, and share with them experiences and give them experiences that lead them to want to do business with us, or whatever the goal is that we have set for this particular type of communication. Just by way of a little context, it wasn't that long ago that broadband access was expensive and technologically difficult. Michelle will remember when we had DSL. We had to enter 2 phone numbers in order to connect to DSL, and it was still connecting and disconnecting. Today on the planet, 1.2 billion people have broadband internet access that they carry around in their pockets, their purses, and for many of them, it is the only way they access social media and digital content. The generation that is in grade school right now is anticipated to be the first generation in a few that will never own computers. All of their needs will be met with tablets and smartphones and smart TVs and the like, and they'll never have this box under their desk or the clamshell laptop. Of course, there will always be a need for computers among some people. I don't think CAD design is all that appealing on a smartphone. But for most people, accessing information and doing their work, word processing, spreadsheets and the like, all that can be done on these consumer-friendly devices. So we have seen the rise of computing that has become very democratized. We no longer need to call IT to tell us what tools we need to use and have them install it. In fact, IT departments are going crazy with employees deciding, well, I need off-site storage for my documents and the company's not providing anything, I'll just use Dropbox. Everybody knows what it is, everybody knows how to use it, you download the app, it's free. The IT departments are concerned about security, but if the IT department isn't going to provide access to something in the organization that's as easy to use as what we all know how to use ourselves, employees will go off and do that on their own. More than half the world's population is under 30 as of this moment, so when I hear a 65-year-old CEO tell me that social media is just what young people are using, I get a little concerned about who they think their audience is. The last time I heard that, it was a CEO of a hospital who is, I think, mostly interested in older people, but nevertheless, attracting employees, getting community members to think of this as the hospital of choice for my parents, for example. We have to keep in mind that the world, even though the aging population is increasing dramatically, most of the population is under 30. When you tell me that social media is a young person's game, I'm going to argue with you. It was once, but those demographics have flattened considerably. Everybody is using social media these days. In fact, I just read an article about a woman who was 104 years old signing up for Facebook, but Facebook, the age range they give you ends at 99, so she wrote Mark Zuckerberg a letter and said, I had to lie about my age to get on Facebook. But she's using it rather prolifically at this point. Some of the characteristics of the digital connected society, first of all, is that we are always on, we're always connected. Your smartphone is always online. Right. Well, while we're over here, it's online where there's Wi-Fi, but when you're in your own home territory, you're always online. How many of you, when you get up in the morning, the first thing you do is reach for your phone and check your messages? And the last thing you do before you turn over and go to sleep, right? It's because there's this, I don't know if you've heard the acronym FOMO. FOMO stands for fear of missing out. I need to know what's going on, whether it's the latest headlines or the latest Facebook posts from your friends or the latest important email from work. We need to know. We're connected all the time. This is one of the reasons I think that work-life balance has become a meaningless concept. Work-life integration becomes much more important, where we can live our lives when we're at work, we can do our work when we're away from the office, and we just have to figure out where that balance is. But the idea of drawing a line and saying, I'm at work from these hours to these hours and then I'm not, it just doesn't work. People are going to check those emails, they're going to check those tweets and Facebook updates. Everything is personalized. Even Google, the search result you see for some search term or phrase, if I entered exactly the same thing, it would be different for me, because Google knows who we are, they know what we've searched before, they have information about our preferences and our experiences, and we're going to see unique things. Facebook is delivering ads based on topics that you have looked at. They curate. You do know that the news feed is not everything from every one of your friends. It is about 300 items at any one time that their algorithm tells you this is what you will be interested in the most, based on previous encounters that you have had here. Of course, mobile, when people ask me what the most significant trend these days is, it's mobility. If you're not thinking mobile first in your communication planning, you're already behind and in trouble. We have to think mobile first, and not desktops and laptops anymore. Not that we don't consider those, but mobile first, that's where all of the access is going. In fact, it was only a few months ago that I think it was in the US, not worldwide, but there was more internet connectivity over mobile devices than over tethered devices for the first time. And that trend line just continues to increase. Because of mobility, though, it is vital to start to consider context. What we're accustomed to doing in communications is mass communication, and it has been for a very long time, that we're going to publish one thing and send it out to absolutely everybody exactly the same way. Print allowed us to do this with employee communications. When I started in employee communications, we published, I worked for ARCO, the oil company, and we published a weekly employee newspaper called the ARCO Spark, and the same newspaper went to 55,000 employees all over the world, regardless of where they were. Employees in Indonesia saw the same ARCO Spark that employees in the UK saw, and it was the same that employees in Los Angeles, California at headquarters saw. And we have moved to the intranet. And guess what? We have just taken those same publications and shoveled them up onto the home page of the internet. Sometimes we allow for personalization, customization, where the mix of materials you see is different, but it's still the same articles being written by corporate headquarters or the brand unit or whoever it may be. Angela Sinicus, a very good friend of mine, some of you in IABC may know Angela, a measurement expert. She has done research in companies that has found that intranets have not made employees any more knowledgeable about what's going on in the organization than what we had before. They have access to more content and we publish more quickly. It's more timely, but they don't know any more than they did before. It's because we're still writing the same content and dishing it out the same way. Mobility creates context because people are looking up information based on what Forrester research refers to as the mobile moment. It's where I am, it's what I'm doing, it's who I'm with. So it's not, gee, I'm sitting at my computer and I'm doing some work and I think I'll do a search to get more information for this report. It's, I'm standing on this corner and I'm thirsty. I wonder if there's a nice bar near here. And increasingly we have organizations that are recognizing the mobile moment. American Airlines, for example, has an app that pulls together data streams from 11 different systems that have never talked to each other before. And it knows where you are in your journey. It knows if you are searching for a flight, if you have booked a flight, if your flight is a week away, when it might tell you, send you a notification that there has been a change in the schedule, or it might tell you the day of the flight, what gate your flight is leaving from, if there's a delay, and the day after your flight, after American Airlines has lost your baggage, it will tell you whether they have found it and what the status of shipping it back to you would be. But it knows where you are in that journey. There are stores that if you have downloaded their app, the retailer will be notified that you have walked into the store and you have bought these 3 things in the past. They can walk up to you, greet you by name, and lead you directly to a suggestion. Last time you were here, you bought this dress. You might like these lovely purple shoes. So context becomes critical in thinking about communications that is mobile. Trust is also huge as we move to a mobile connected communication environment. We are embarking on this era of the collaborative economy. You've heard of Uber. We saw protests in Parliament Square against Uber. We support the black cabs, keep Uber out. But Uber and Airbnb and hundreds of these companies emerging, and the companies themselves are really nothing more than marketplaces that connect people who have with people who need. And it is the ratings that the buyers and the sellers, or the renters and the people who are doing the renting, give to each other that leads to the level of trust that says, I can get into your car, I can stay in the spare room in your house and be reasonably comfortable that I'm going to be treated well and not cheated or killed in my sleep or what have you. So building trust, building credibility has always been important in communications, but where we are connecting with people through these intermediary applications and marketplaces, it becomes even more important. And what distributed computing is all about in the first place is collaboration. It is a decentralized network. In fact, Tim Berners-Lee recently called for the re-decentralization of the internet. He's very concerned that everything is now being centered in these corporate-run sites, and by corporate I mean Facebook. You don't own your content on Facebook. Facebook does. If Facebook goes out of business tomorrow, you've lost everything that you have ever published there. And he wants to return to the early days where I would set up my little site on my little server, and these were all federated, all networked and connected together. That's what internet search was finding where all these different servers were. But it enables collaboration. A wonderful book, Clay Shirky's first book was called Here Comes Everybody. The subtitle of the book was Organizing Without Organizations. And when a senior leader who doesn't use digital communications or social media asks me what it's really all about, that's the point I try to make. It's not about how cool Facebook is or how everybody's on LinkedIn for business and recruiting purposes. It's about the fact that people can accomplish things. They can set out and identify goals that they share in common and come together to do something about it. They can do it with amazing speed and agility. And once they've accomplished what they set out to, they can go off on their separate ways again. Collaboration is really at the heart of what all of this is about, particularly for those of you doing internal communications. I think the role of internal communications is changing dramatically. I think we will always craft communication content for employees to know, but increasingly what we have to do is facilitate communication among employees so that they can find and engage in with each other, and help each other get their jobs done, answer questions. McKinsey and Company says that there is a potential 25% productivity improvement in organizations where employees are networked with each other and with their external audiences. And that's because the biggest drain on productivity in the workplace is the amount of time it takes for information workers to find answers to questions or solutions to problems. So we must be focused on collaboration. So what are the keys then to succeeding with digital media today? Well, the first of these is useful content, and useful is the operative word here. There's a ton of content out there. A colleague of mine, Mark Schaefer, has claimed that we are about to encounter the era of content shock. This is the point at which there is so much content available to consumers that the cost for an organization to have their content discovered and consumed becomes less and less worthwhile. Only those with the deepest pockets and the biggest, best known names will be found. Now, I disagree with Mark, and we have a very collegial debate going back and forth about this. But if you look at, for example, a company, I don't know if they're here in the UK, but in the US, it's Warby Parker. Do you know Warby Parker? They're trying to disrupt the eyeglass industry, which is a very tightly held industry. A lot of, well, I shouldn't say price fixing, but certainly pricing control. Not that many players in the industry. Warby Parker has come in. They only do online sales. And they're doing very, very, very well. First of all, they have adopted the corporate social responsibility attitude that I think is increasingly important because consumers care about it more and more, prospective employees. So every pair of glasses that you buy, they'll give one to an underprivileged person in an impoverished part of the world. But their customer service is remarkable. If you tweet a question to Warby Parker, if you send them an email, they will shoot a video of a customer service rep answering that question. Nothing fancy or professional, it's just done with a smartphone. They upload it to YouTube and send you the link back saying, here's the answer to your question. And the customer service reps, very engaging people. Martha, I'm so glad you asked this question. Let me tell you all about our clamshell line. Right? Or about the home try-on process or whatever the issue might be. And of course, if it's done on Twitter, all of the people following Warby Parker and all of the people following Martha see that link. So here is an answer that is delivered as a piece of video content to one person, and you look on YouTube and they have 3, 4, 5,000 views. And how much work, how much effort went into somebody very spontaneously just saying, here's what I know. Basically the same thing they would have said on the phone if they had taken the call on an 800 line. So useful content is very important. Engagement is vital. There was just a study released within the last week that I saw that said most consumers believe that the content that is produced and the social media engagement that is activated by organizations is one way and is designed to sell you something. They don't feel like the organizations really want to interact with them. They don't want to provide any kind of engagement that is going to help them. We're just going to do what we need to do in this new digital world to sell you something. Only 17% of the people responding to this very large survey sample said that they believed that the companies they deal with were really interested in a relationship with them. And yet what do we talk about all the time with social media is building that relationship. Third-party reviews. Getting that earned media is absolutely critical. And I am increasingly convinced that all of the online digital marketing that we do needs to be directed to getting other people to tell their colleagues, their friends, their family, this is the experience that I had with this organization, whether it was content, whether it was customer service. Those organizations still believe customer service is a cost center where the goal is to get somebody off the phone as quickly as possible, are really missing the boat. Because what you want people to say is, I had a magnificent customer service experience with this organization. I'll give you a quick story to back this up. This was a few years ago. Microsoft Internet Explorer 6 was in beta. And I was using it, and I wrote a rather lengthy blog post, and I went to publish it, and I got a pop-up that said, you're about to do whatever it was they thought I was about to do. Are you sure you want to do this? And I said, well, yeah. And I clicked the button, and it redrew my screen, and I lost every word that I had written. So I wrote a blistering post about Internet Explorer 6. The first comment was from a gentleman I had never heard of before. His name was Dean Hakimovich. And he said, we are aware of this problem and plan to have it addressed in the next version of the software. In the meantime, I think Joe or Tony should be able to help you with a workaround. And then a couple comments later, there was somebody named Joe Franco, and he said, yes, indeed, here's what you should do to prevent this from happening until we address this in the next upgrade. And I said, what's this, customer service at Microsoft trolling blogs? And so I did a search on Dean Hakimovich, and he was the vice president of the Internet Explorer division at Microsoft. He wasn't customer service, he was the guy who ran that unit. And I wrote my next post saying, Microsoft redefines customer service. My experience was so great that it left the bad taste of that redrawn screen in the dust, and I was just mightily impressed, and people responded saying, this is amazing. I've had many experiences like that since then. In fact, complaining about a company on Twitter now is like a test of how great the response is going to be from the organization. And of course, mobile and context. I think if we focus on these four things and learn the strategies and learn how people are using these in their day-to-day lives and what we can do to make their lives easier, to reduce hassle, to reduce friction in their lives, our communications will improve. I want to talk about these in a little detail for just a few minutes in terms of useful content. This notion of content marketing keeps coming up. The Content Marketing Institute refers to content marketing as a technique of creating and distributing relevant and valuable content. And this, I think, is what a lot of organizations miss. When people talk about not getting a lot of organic reach on Facebook, in a lot of instances, it's because nobody would ever share that crap that they're publishing up on their Facebook page. I know organizations that are doing just fine with their Facebook organic reach. Not that you shouldn't spend money on advertising, because it really does amplify that reach for a very little bit of investment. But it's relevant and valuable content to attract, acquire, and engage a clearly defined and understood target audience with the objective of driving profitable customer action. Essentially, every company these days needs to be a media company. Every company needs to think about a steady flow of content that satisfies those criteria of being relevant and useful to the target audience that you're trying to reach. Ultimately, our goal should be to become the trusted guide to usable content that's going to make your life easier. It's going to address your questions, answer them. It's going to address your issues, solve your problems, help you do your job, help you live your life. But it's becoming the trusted guide, which really satisfies that criteria I mentioned earlier of building trust. I think recommendations are absolutely vital these days. Just a little bit of data from a survey that I stumbled on, rank the factors based on how much they impact your level of trust in the companies that you buy from. You can see excellent customer service at the very top. Then has reading the positive and negative reviews influenced your buying decisions? And you can see massively. Positive reviews influence the purchase decision. Negative reviews influence the purchase decision. We need to be influencing the audiences that we reach through customer service, through content, through other kinds of engagement to talk about us, whether it's a review on Yelp, whether it is a review that somebody writes. Neville Hobson, my podcast co-host out of Wokingham, has a whole review section on his website where he reviews products, and he's very candid about it, and it influences his readers as to whether they'll consider that product or not. Do you recall reading a positive or negative review regarding customer service? And overwhelmingly, people, yes, they have seen these. We routinely in public relations talk about earned media as what the reporters write for the newspapers. They're still important. I won't understate the value of professional journalists these days. Some people will, but I think they continue to be very important. But in the networked world, in the connected world, everybody is a reporter at some level. And earned media now means getting those reviews that somebody like a Neville Hobson would write. Shared good and bad customer service interactions with others. Yes, I have. I have shared bad customer service with other people, and you can see the green line is all, the blue line is B2B, the purple line is Gen X, and the red line is people who earn over $150,000 US per year. And that's 100%, by the way. They have shared bad customer service stories online with others. And it's also 99% sharing good customer service experiences. So those experiences that people have lead to the perceptions that result in the view that people have, customers have, of your organization's reputation. Do you trust customer reviews as much as personal recommendations? And again, at various levels, yes. If there are more than one, if I believe the reviews are authentic, for some types of business, not others, but people take these very seriously, and increasingly look to these reviews. Neville and I, by the way, talked on the podcast we recorded yesterday in my hotel room about the experience we had at the Babylon Gardens rooftop restaurant that Richard Branson owns. Michelle had booked this reservation months in advance, high expectations, terrible service, extraordinarily good food, terrible service. So Laura Hobson, Neville's wife, went home and started looking up the reviews, and she was saying, look at this, it's like a 4.5 on the food and a 2.2 on the service. So this is going to start to weigh on the decisions people make about everything from where they eat to what kind of car they buy to which airlines they fly. There was a study of KLM and the social media that they use, leading people to write about their experience because of the engagement that the social media efforts resulted in, and the impact that had on the perception of the reputation of KLM among the friends of the person who wrote about the experience. And here's what she said: if your social media profile features positive consumer reviews, your friends and followers will likely develop favorable impressions of your reputation. The rapid rise in social media use among all demographics, and remember that chart from earlier, means that more people will be wanting to engage with you on social media, thus presenting you with an excellent opportunity to use this platform to improve your reputation. This is the result of data. This is not just an opinion. In terms of mobile and context, I think, well, let's share some obligatory statistics. There are 6.8 billion people on the planet. You have probably heard that. Of concern to those in the field of dentistry, we have 4 billion using a mobile phone and only 3.5 billion using a toothbrush. So we have more people using phones than brushing their teeth. An extraordinary piece of data. 91% of adults have a mobile phone with an arm's reach every minute of every day. 71% of users access their social media from a mobile device, and as you saw earlier, 25% exclusively from a mobile device. 90% of text messages are read within 3 minutes. How many of your organizations are using text messaging as a mechanism to reach employees or to reach customers? We seem to think of that as passé, but look at the rise of WhatsApp. There was much screaming and teeth gnashing when Microsoft separated Messenger from its mobile app for the rest of Facebook, and yet there are now 200 million active users of Messenger. Text messaging is a critically important channel for reaching people through mobile devices. 9 out of 10 mobile searches lead to action. In other words, I'm looking for that bar or restaurant. I'm looking for, as we discovered on this trip, a dentist nearby. When you're mobile and doing a search, it's because it's something you need now, and those searches result in action. You need to be discovered on mobile devices. For those of you working in business to consumer, mobile coupons are redeemed at a rate 10 times exceeding what we have seen with print coupons. You don't have to remember to take them with you to the store. They're stored in the vault on your phone. In the US, 10% of American adults have texted a charitable contribution because it's not a matter of writing a check and putting it in an envelope and addressing and stamping the envelope and walking it out to the mailbox. It's, oh, 54387. Right? I've just given $10 to the American Red Cross. Russ McGuire is an executive with an American cell company, Sprint, and he established this law of mobility that I agree with entirely. That's the value of any product or service increases with your mobility. He also says, by the way, that mobile alters the conditions under which products and services can be used. I love music. Music is a very important part of my life and always has been. But there was a time in my life that the only time I could listen to my music was when I was in my living room. That's where the turntable was. We would take the LP, remember LPs, out of the jacket, give it a little clean with the cloth, and put the needle on. That was the only place that I could listen to music. I could listen to what the disc jockey wanted to play, and I would find a station that reflected my tastes as closely as possible. My music, though, I had to be in my living room. Sony invented the Walkman. The value of my music collection skyrocketed because I could take it with me. What do you have in terms of resources and information and transactions that become more valuable to your customers and your prospects when they can access it wherever they are? We really need to start thinking through what a customer needs, what an employee needs when they're out and about. I did a mobility audit, by the way, for PepsiCo to determine how ready their employees were for mobility. And what we found was on the front line, these are the people who wear the hairnets and fill bottles with PepsiCo, with Pepsi, or manufacture Cheetos. They're using their smartphones. They've set up groups with their teams on WhatsApp, so supervisors can reach employees, employees can reach supervisors. Employees are taking pictures of equipment that seems to be damaged and sending those pictures to the maintenance department. They say that leads the line to be down for 20 minutes for repair instead of 3 hours. Okay. Employees are figuring out how to use these tools to be more efficient. We as communicators need to figure out how to use them to deliver information that employees need where they are, when they are, who they're with, rather than just pushing out the same kind of traditional internal communications content. Same situation absolutely applies to external audiences, whether it's B2B or B2C. Mobile messaging is just taking over the world. It's astounding. And we're also seeing the rise of ephemeral messaging. I was talking to Diana during lunch about Snapchat because Dove, the line of personal hygiene products from Unilever, very active in the field of self-esteem for women, did a Snapchat campaign just about 3 weeks ago, where young women who are already using Snapchat could share their negative feelings about themselves without fear that other people would see them because the message vanishes 10 or 20 seconds after delivered, and then they had a team of psychologists and self-esteem experts who would respond to those with positive messages, understanding that this is a tool that your target audience is using can lead you to develop campaigns and communication processes that take advantage of it. By the way, Snapchat, a lot of organizations are very afraid of because it has a reputation as the tool that people use for sexting. But the research into why people like Snapchat is the fact that it's not a permanent record. I'm not sending a message that I'll be able to go back and look at that stream. It's more like real conversation in real life. Because the message vanishes after a few seconds, it's like the conversation we would have if we were standing on the street corner. And for a lot of people who are parts of small communities of friends, that's very, very important to them. And we talked about the mobile moment, those times where you absolutely need that information in order to make some sort of a decision or some sort of transaction or find the information you need. Increasingly, employees are bringing their own devices to work. I was amused at PepsiCo to see a lot of executives walking around with 2 phones, the one that PepsiCo gave them and their own. And I said, why are you doing that? And they said, well, this thing that PepsiCo gave me is crap. They've even disabled text messaging, so mine is so much better. And they only used the official device when they needed to. And again, the front line is using this for some remarkable things that they have figured out all by themselves. In fact, I was intrigued to find that the policies at PepsiCo were no phones on the plant floor for safety reasons. They didn't want people texting and falling into a vat of Cheetos. And also no photos on the plant floor for security reasons. We don't want our competitors to see our proprietary manufacturing processes. And in the report I delivered, I said you have to revisit these policies so that you can ensure that there is safety and ensure security without constraining employees' abilities to innovate in order to be more efficient, which is exactly what they were doing on their own. Strategizing all of this really means blurring the lines that we have traditionally imposed on communication processes. This is from the Altimeter Group, a consulting organization and business analyst organization, where they look at content marketing. And what they say is that you have to start with the strategy. You have to start with the content strategy, then figure out which channels you're going to deploy them through. Traditionally, advertising and marketing and PR have worked in a vacuum. We know what the overarching message is, but seeing PR campaigns that are very closely aligned with advertising campaigns is a rare thing. Now we have to figure out what the content strategy is and decide which of these are paid, which of these are owned, which of these are earned, which of these are social. Most folks don't distinguish social as a separate element. They just say earned, owned, paid, and they consider social owned. But as Sir Tim Berners-Lee says, I don't own Facebook. I may own the content I publish there, but if Facebook vanishes tomorrow, there's my content just gone. So I tend to put social into its own category. But you publish across those channels, you use it to build the engagement. It's the engagement that leads to amplification. It's that third-party review, the third-party report, the sharing of the experience that leads more people to see it. Then you decide, wow, this worked really well here in social. We should do something with that, maybe buy a Facebook ad. Maybe do something with that in our marketing efforts. Analyze the results with metrics and analytics, make some decisions about how you're going to make mid-course corrections and adjustments, and then develop more content. So what this means is that we're blurring those lines. I don't know if any of you saw the 100 Years of Oreo campaign, where they had a different image for each day leading up to the 100th anniversary of the Oreo cookie. And they had what they called a newsroom. And the newsroom was occupied by representatives of 5 different agencies that worked for Nabisco, Oreo. It was their digital agency, their marketing agency, their branding agency, their PR agency, and their advertising agency. And they were all working on this because the images were going to be deployed across all of those channels. And they had to be consistent and they had to work well together. The other thing they did that I found was very interesting was that if there was breaking news that they could apply to a new image, they would scrap the one that had been planned for that day and very quickly get the new one up. But everybody had to buy off on that. Everybody had to know that we're changing from what we had planned to, I remember in the US, the National Football League referees were on strike. And the day that the strike ended, they did an image that had the referees' black and white jerseys. They had the wafer of the cookie against the white cream filling, the black and white stripes, and they put that up as that day's image, NFL referee strike over. All of those different agencies and internal communications representatives had to be on board with that change. So the days of the siloed communication functions are really over. Another issue that I think is vitally important is ensuring that your staff has the competencies that are necessary to execute. I'm very concerned when I read job descriptions in recruitments saying we're looking for somebody who has experience in digital, and I'm not quite sure what that means. I get even more concerned when I see requirements like must have amassed more than 500 Twitter followers, because I definitely don't know what that means in terms of your ability to execute a communication strategy. A friend of mine used to run corporate employee communications at PepsiCo, had developed a competency audit for general communications purposes. And I brought him in on one of my assignments. And I noticed as we were working, I said, Mark, you have one competency here for digital and social. That seems inadequate. So we partnered with another colleague of mine who used to work at Dell. In fact, he's responsible for really initiating the social media program at Dell, which is held up as one of the models. And we started doing some research, and we came up with a number of different competencies. And I think it is important to look at the skills that your staff has and map them against the strategy that you're trying to execute and figure out which of these skills you don't have. I mean, you hire somebody based on the fact that, wow, they really built this great footprint on Facebook, and now you're going to expect them to manage a special community that you're building around a particular issue or an initiative, and they have no community management skills. This can lead you to only three possible solutions, which is hire more people who have the right skills, train the people you have on the skills they're missing, or outsource some of this work to agencies or specialists who have these skills. But I see a lot of organizations stumbling badly on their execution of communication strategies online because somebody didn't have the skills they needed to execute. You particularly see this with people representing companies sending inappropriate tweets. And I think this is a lack of a skill set, that they've been assigned to do Twitter without understanding how quickly an inappropriate message can spread. So again, all of this requires that we have skills that cross boundaries. This doesn't mean there's no specialization. Advertisers still need media buying. I work in PR and corporate communications. I don't need to have media buying expertise, but we need to be working together. We need to tear down the walls of the silos, or at least punch holes in them, so that we're working very, very closely together on earned, owned, paid, and social. Again, this is because we have entered the era of the institutionalization of social media. And the last point I want to make is that this means that every employee is now a communicator on behalf of your organization. They are, whether you like it or not. Their Facebook profile, their Twitter profile, their LinkedIn profile, odds are they've listed who they work for. So everything they say is associated with the organization, especially when an issue comes up and somebody says, hey, you work for FedEx, you work for Airbus, what's the deal with this I read in the newspaper? And many of them are terrified of responding, but they are your best spokespeople. In fact, according to Edelman, we're going to look at this chart in just a second from Edelman, but your employees are the most credible source inside your organization. Not your paid spokespeople, not your senior leadership, but your frontline employees and your frontline subject matter experts are the most trusted, most credible spokespeople in your organization. As a result, we must train them. We must start to create employee ambassador or advocacy programs that leverage the employees' levels of engagement and their passion for their jobs and their employers. You can see that the most social organizations, the ones whose employees represent the organization online in their own communities and helping others when they see a problem arise, just jumping into the conversation, say, I work for that company, I can put you in touch with the right person to solve that problem. Or let me tell you what we're doing in terms of corporate social responsibility. And these are very, very successful organizations, by and large, that are doing this. We are entering the era of social business. Social media has been great, but social business means that the tools of social media become just the tools that your employees use to communicate. Do any of you have teenage children? Yeah, do they use email? Keep your hand up if they're regular users of email. Yeah, sort of. I remember our daughter, I sent her an email 3 or 4 years ago, and she never replied. And I sent her another email, and she never replied. And I called her. I said, Rachel, how come you haven't replied to that email? And she goes, Dad, I don't use email. I said, well, why do you have an email address? She says, well, I need that to sign up for Facebook and Snapchat. And, that's why they have email addresses. That's the authentication for signing up for services. Email is a 50-year-old technology. It's very, very creaky. And employees are figuring out that social networks, collaborative work environments are more efficient and more effective than email, internally and externally, which is leading us into this environment in which social businesses create value through these networks of people. According to the Warwick Business School, employees who use this stuff are more creative, collaborative, and productive. And again, going back to the Edelman Trust Barometer, you can see that a person like yourself from the organization is more credible than the CEO. Subject matter experts, technical experts, you can see here, are more credible than the paid spokesperson or the CEO. We need to leverage this resource in the organization. That requires training. This is that McKinsey study I referenced earlier that shows that there is a 20 to 25% productivity gain opportunity with employees who are networked. By the way, McKinsey also has found what they consider to be a very strong correlation between fully networked employees, those who participate in social media both internally and externally, and market share growth. It was a strong enough correlation that they reported it publicly, saying we believe that organizations whose employees are fully networked will help those organizations take market share away from competitors. Employees are using social networks for business purposes. The Society for New Communication Research did this study, found that they are mostly using these once a day or many times a day to float ideas, to test solutions that they are proposing, just to stay up to date on trends and practices in their profession. When faced with a professional decision, survey respondents are most likely to use online social networks to identify trends, to explore, or to do both identify trends or to float a decision to reach a decision. Only 20% are not using social networks for work purposes among information workers. I think subject matter experts are gold. Companies like Dell, this is the Dell Social Media Listening Center, they are recruiting internal subject matter experts who already have established a social media footprint. They are training them, and when their listening center identifies an issue, say with cloud computing or pricing on a laptop line, they will send that to the subject matter expert and ask if they will jump in and engage on the company's behalf. Their credibility is so much higher than a salesperson or a customer service representative that it has proven to be just absolute gold for Dell. Cisco Systems is doing something very similar. We have to start looking at all of our employees as advocates and ambassadors. These are just some of the companies that have established ambassador programs. Like I say, our employees are online engaging in conversations with their communities anyway and talking about work. It's best if they're trained. It's best if they know what the policies are. It's best if we can inspire our most engaged employees to do this voluntarily to help the company achieve its goals. Pepsi, in their daily employee email newsletter, every headline gives employees the opportunity to share that news on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. It's internal communications, but it's all been reviewed and approved, right? You know why internal communications is reviewed and approved? It's in case it gets outside, it's okay. It's already been approved for external consumption. So why not let employees share it? If you have an employee who loves rugby and sees this, they would want to share that on their Facebook page with all their rugby fan friends. Look what my company's doing. Okay? So that's every employee engaged. At Sprint, the cell phone company, every day employees can choose from pre-written messages that have not already been sent out by the company to share with their friends and their other networks. So that's essentially what I wanted to share with you. These are what I think are some of the most important trends. And what I'd like to do now for a few minutes is open it up to your questions.